Coach, really appreciate you taking time out here to do this podcast with me. We're going to call this podcast Pick and Roll because I think there's a lot of different ways to deal with things in the pick and roll. But, clearly, you have a very interesting background. I guess come from a relatively small town in Wisconsin, Oregon, Wisconsin, and then went to Kenyon College and had a really nice career playing Division III basketball. I read where you're the all-time leading assist guy there. Is there any truth to that?
I guess so, Doc. When you're young and you're playing, you think you're going to be able to play basketball forever. But man, I had a lot of fun playing, and I was one of those people. We all, want to be around these type of players when we're coaches. That when my career was coming to an end, I just didn't know what I was going to do. I felt like basketball was my whole identity, and being a player and being on a team. And I was lucky that actually my first college coach kind of had put a bug in my ear about coaching. And he recommended that I come work for him as a GA. So I was able to transition that identity, from being a basketball player to being, part of a coaching staff. And that was 1999.
So I got a question for you. Do you think point guards make the best coaches?
Maybe. I mean, I think it's not so much about the position. I think it's more just about, those traits that go into, being able to communicate with guys about what affects winning and what helps guys be their best. But we've certainly seen some great coaches that are point guards or were point guards. And then we've seen, there's definitely some good ones out there that have a little more size. And most of it is just because we were short and there was nothing else for us to do.
I know we kind of had to figure it out. We short guys.
That's right.
Had to figure it out. That's probably what a lot of these coaches do. They got to figure it out. But man, you had a meteoric rise. I guess like you said, graduated in '99, and then within 10 years, you're a head basketball coach at a Division I school. That's pretty amazing. And, follow your track, I guess, you had an opportunity after you went to Dayton, I guess, as an ops guy, and then went to Akron for a couple of years, then Clemson, then Florida for a year. And then what did you think when VCU called you and said, Shaka, we want you to be our head coach? What was the first thing that entered your mind?
Well, they actually never told me that. It was a interesting story of how it all occurred. And we're a little bit crazy in the coaching business in the way that we do hiring, just because everything happens so fast. I was fortunate, really thanks to you, Doc, to be part of the Ville 7 program that you started, and to get a chance to get to know, just different administrators, including some of the folks there at VCU. And also getting to know Anthony, the coach at VCU before me, Anthony Grant, who just did an unbelievable job. And I know someone that, you deserve a lot of credit for, finding him and helping kind of usher him into great success as a head coach. But then, I was at Florida working for Billy Donovan. I had gone to Ville 7 for a couple of years. And when Anthony left, I got a call to interview for the job. I interviewed down in Gainesville, Florida, but I didn't even really know if I was ready to be a head coach. It's hard to know that at a young age. I was 31 years old. I was working for Billy Donovan. So, my desire was just to be on his staff and learn from him. He was, like a coaching idol to me. He still is a real mentor for me. And I had only been there for 1 year. And actually, Doc, after I interviewed, I asked Billy, I said, what should I, do you want me to stay? I mean, should I try to pursue this job more? And he's like, I'm not going to tell you what to do. He said, you got to figure that out on your own. So I got a call to come up to VCU, and I was told it would be half interview and half, just me kind of getting a feel for the place. But, when you fly out of Gainesville, Florida, you can only really connect in two places, Charlotte and Atlanta. I happened to be connecting in Charlotte. My wife was with me. And as soon as I got off the plane, I turned my phone back on and I got a bunch of messages that said, congratulations. So at that point, I guess I learned I was going to be the coach.
How about that? That's a little bit different. It's kind of funny you mentioned that because, I had hired Anthony, I guess 3 years before that. And it was kind of just the opposite. When, I interviewed Anthony and we went to the Atlanta airport. We met for like 6 hours and talked to him. And, and then he came up and Chris, his wife, came up to Richmond and, and so we were going to have a press conference like on that Tuesday. And to be honest, I mean, you know how Anthony is. He's a man of few words, you know what I mean? And so I wasn't exactly sure he was going to come, but, he did, and it turned out great. But I mean, what were your thoughts? I mean, clearly, Anthony had done a great job and Jeff had done a great job there. So now you're a young guy and you're put in that position. Some guys get jobs where, things were bad, you know what I mean? So, you got a little bit of time to build a program here. With the fans at VCU, they wanted success right away. How did you kind of feel about that?
Doc, you're exactly right. I mean, there's pros and cons of taking over a completely rebuilding situation. And then there's pros and cons of taking over for a successful coach where there's been, a history of success recently. I remember when I first, got to VCU, I was meeting with one of the administrators there. And, later that day, I was going to be, sitting down with the whole team and, having the first team meeting. And he said to me, now Anthony, he's 6'5" and he's unbelievably well put together and he looks like a Greek god. And he said, and you, and he just kind of like paused there. So that was something that, for me, was a reminder of something that people had told me kind of along the way, which is you can't try to be the guy you're replacing. You can't try to be the head coach that you were working for. You can't try to be anyone else. You have to just be yourself. And I definitely was pretty nervous. I remember going into the press conference feeling a lot of anxiety about, how I was going to come across and, what are the right things to say? And again, I'm replacing a coach that's been highly successful, just went to the NCAA tournament. As you know, Doc, the best player in school history, Eric Maynor, was graduating at that time. And I called a friend of mine named Dr. James Burrell. He's a sports psychologist, brilliant man. And I said, Dr. B, I said, I'm nervous, man. Give me some thoughts on this press conference. He said, well, what's your goal? And I said, well, I really would like to come across and be well liked, by the people, the media, the folks at the press conference, the fans. And he said, well, do you control that? And I said, no, I don't. I can't control whether they like me or not. He said, well, you got to change your goal then. And he said, why don't you make your goal that you want to convey the enthusiasm that you have for the job and for the opportunity to be the coach at VCU. And that really helped me because that was under my control. I could convey that enthusiasm. At that very first press conference, I said, we are going to wreak havoc on our opponents. I paraphrase that, but I used that term. And that was obviously became a moniker for us in our style of play and something that our guys used as an identity.
So, you bring up havoc and clearly, you became kind of the national poster guy for, the way you played, with great pressure, a lot of energy, high motored guys, played really hard, maybe, guys that hadn't been, recruited by the Power Five guys. And clearly, how'd you find some of those guys like Travion Graham and Briante Weber and Troy Daniel? Those guys play in the NBA, and yet, how'd you kind of put all that stuff together? Clearly talented guys, but you had to figure out how to put all that together.
Yeah, our coaching staff deserves a lot of credit. You mentioned Briante Weber. He played for us for 4 years, and he was synonymous with havoc, with playing that way. But Mike Rhodes, who's the current head coach of VCU, deserves unbelievable credit. I remember when he first brought up Briante Weber, he said, now he's only got offers from Norfolk State and a couple Division II schools. He said, but I'm telling you, the guy would be really good the way that we want to play. So we brought him up to our camp. We had on back-to-back days, we had a team camp on Saturday and we had an elite camp on Sunday. And so Briante came up. He had just graduated from high school and he was about to do a post-grad year at Fork Union. And so he comes up to the team camp and we actually matched him up with Travion Graham, who later on committed to us, became the second all-time leading scorer after Eric Maynor at VCU. And Briante did an unbelievable job. Just, he was inside Travion's shirt. I mean, it was really impressive. So we said, man, this is impressive what he did today. So then the next day was elite camp, and it was Briante and a bunch of other guards there. And we really had one scholarship to offer to a guard. And so we took Briante and one other guard, and we went in the side gym and we had them play one-on-one for about a half hour. And Briante made the other guy quit. And this is a kid that ended up going to a school in our league, had a really nice career. I think scored close to 1,500 points and did a lot of good things. But Briante just took this guy's heart. And so after that day, it was like, we got to have this guy. So we offered him a scholarship and he committed on the spot. And I'll never forget, Doc, you remember the stairs in the Siegel Center on the end near the parking lot. We were walking down those stairs and we walked Briante out to the parking lot. And then as we were walking back up, one of our other coaches, I won't name the name, but one of our other coaches said to Mike Rhodes, he said, Rhodes, he better be good for us because we could have gotten a better guard than him. Like we could have gotten someone that was more highly ranked, more highly regarded. And I remember Rhodes saying, hey, shut up. I know what I'm doing. And I give Mike a lot of credit because he believed in him. He brought him to the table. The kid did great. And then he ended up, if he wouldn't have torn his ACL, he would have been the all-time leader in NCAA in terms of steals.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great story. That's a great story. And of course, knowing Mike Rhodes, he's kind of pretty tough guy too. You know what I mean? So I'm sure that really resonated with him, the way Briante kind of took that guy down.
Well, and Doc, I do want to say this too, just in case if there's any, VCU fans that hear this, Anthony and his staff deserve amazing credit for the competitiveness of the guys that we inherited. Like I said, there's pros and cons of inheriting a good situation or a bad situation. One of the pros of taking over for Anthony Grant was, man, I mean, there was a competitiveness, there was a standard of when we take to court, we go at it and we go after winning. And so when we did, institute the way we wanted to play, which wasn't a whole lot different than the way Anthony was playing, it was not a huge adjustment for those guys mentality-wise. And I remember when we did bring some of those young guys into the fold, some of the guys that had played for Anthony, like Joey Rodriguez, Brandon Rozelle, Ed Nixon, when Troy Daniels first stepped foot on campus, and when those guys would go to play pickup, literally, they wouldn't let Troy Daniels stay on the court. They would like physically like bump him and move him off the court. And Troy had to learn to be physically sturdy and tough enough to literally be on the court. I'm not even talking about make a shot, make a basket, but literally to be on the court. So again, Anthony and all of his assistants, they deserve a ton of credit because that was in place. And obviously that was a big part of why we were able to go to the Final Four in our second year.
Yeah, I mean, that's incredible. So I think the first year you won the CBI, isn't that right? And then the second year you made it to the Final Four. It's just unbelievable.
Well, I'll tell you, Doc, you want to hear a funny story about that? So the first year, I think we won 21 games in the regular season and conference tournament. We lost to Old Dominion in the semifinals of the conference tournament. We had been up, I think, 12 or 15 in the second half. They came back and beat us. In fact, Doc, that's one of a handful of games. If I could have any game back, it would have been that game. But anyway, so we lose that game, and we had a good enough RPI where we were definitely a team that was expected to be one of the NIT teams, but we did not get in. We didn't get in the NIT. And as you know, at that point in time, sometimes those selections were a little bit less about RPI and a little more about maybe the conference you were in or different factors. And so fast forward to the next year, in the regular season and the conference tournament, we won, I think, 23 games. And so we were on the bubble. And so one of the things I did, Doc, you'll think this is funny, is I called all the members of the NIT selection committee, not the NCAA, the NIT selection committee. I remember Larry Robinson was one of them from NC State. There's 5 or 6 other people on the committee. And I said, listen, this kind of happened to us last year. And, obviously we're hoping to make the tournament, but if something happens, we really would love to be in the NIT. Like we played in the CBI last year. We were able to win it, but if we don't make the NCAA, we want to get in the NIT. And then we obviously end up making the tournament. It was like pandemonium in our office when we got announced. And it's just funny because we end up going all the way from the first 4 to the final 4. But a couple of days earlier, I'm lobbying to be in the NIT.
Yeah, I mean, that was a tremendous run. And like you said, I think, I had been with a couple of years, I was at VCU. We kind of had the same thing happen. I remember one year we were like had an RPI of 64 and we were on the bubble for the NCAA. And then we don't even get in the NIT. And I reach out to the, who's ever had the NIT then, I can't remember, and said, and like, we've got the best RPI in the country of anybody that didn't get in, the NIT, and there are people getting in at 115, 120 and call them. And that's when they had this little committee of ex-coaches and said, did anybody ever see us play? They said, well, we don't really look at the numbers. We just kind of know teams that are good. I'm going, oh, really? That's interesting. And I said, well, who was supposed to observe us? And it was after Coach Smith, Dean Smith had retired at North Carolina. And they said, well, Coach Smith is in charge of North Carolina, Virginia, whatever. And I said, so you tell me Dean Smith came to watch us play, and so, but, everybody's got horror stories about the NIT and the NCAA. There's no question. But getting back to you, what are you, when you got there, what were the 2 critical things that you really thought you had to, get your players to believe in? If you had to say our identity or got to be, these 2 things got to be included in our identity, what would those be?
Well, our main identity on the court was havoc. And what that meant was we are going to absolutely go after the other team the way that we play defensively and offensively. We kind of thought of more defensively, but we wanted to be the more aggressive team and we wanted to be the better conditioned team. So that would probably be on the court, be, what the biggest points of emphasis for us. But to be honest with you, Doc, more important than that was relationship building, because, since I was replacing Anthony and since our coaching staff was replacing a staff that had done a really good job relationship wise with the guys, the players we inherited, believe it or not, were very slow to come around in terms of their willingness to trust us. And man, I could tell you some horror stories. Bradford Burgess, who I know really well, being from Richmond, started every game of his career at VCU. So came in as a freshman and started every game for Anthony. Had a heck of a season and one of the key components of an NCAA tournament team. So when I get to VCU, he literally, and he will admit this to you, was sabotaging our workouts. I mean, we'd be in the workouts and we'd say, okay, when you get the ball, I want you to, go from half court, make an inside out crossover at the 3-point line, then, come to a 2-foot jump stop in the paint, pivot and finish against the pad. Man, he would go from half court, dribble up to the 3 line and just shoot a 3. I mean, he was testing us to see, okay, how far can I go with these guys before they lose it on me? Because I'm really upset right now that my coach left, and I'm going to take it out on the new coaches. So one of the biggest things was just getting him, Brandon Roselle, Joey Rodriguez, who actually left the team for a couple months.
Well, yeah, I remember.
That's another funny story, Doc. If you want, I'll tell you that one. But just getting those guys to trust and, be willing to say, okay, there's new coaches here. The things that they want us to do are actually good for us. We can win just as much as we won, maybe even more. But without that trust, we had no chance.
Well, I mean, I think, being successful in any organization is all about trust, and it's a two-way street, Shaka. You know that. They have to trust you, you have to trust them. And I think in today's world, that's clearly even so much more crucial. And, share this story about Joey. I kind of remember when he left for a little bit, but then came back.
So this was amazing. And, if I ever wrote a book about the Final Four, which I don't think I will, but if I ever did, I probably would put this story first, because the Final Four doesn't happen if this doesn't happen. So when we first got there, Joey told me, he said, I was considering transferring before the coaching change, but now that there's been a coaching change, I'm really considering transferring because I'm homesick. I'd rather be around my family. I like it here at VCU, but, I kind of want to be back in Florida. He's from Orlando. And so I said, well, listen, Joey, we want you here. We'd love to have you, but obviously if you don't want to be here, then we respect that. So he decided about a week later that he was in fact going to transfer. But Doc, he came to every one of our workouts and would sit on the side and watch. So he didn't participate in the workouts, but he was around the office and Franklin Street Gym as much as anyone in our program. And he'd come through the office, he'd talk to coaches, he'd be around. But he made the decision he was going to transfer to Rollins College, which is, as you know, is a Division II school in Orlando. So school gets done in early May at VCU. He came by the office one last time. Hey, good to meet you guys. And, I'm out of here. I'm taking off. He got all his stuff, moved back to Orlando. So for all we knew, he was done. And as you know, Eric Maynor had been the starting point guard and Joey was kind of the next point guard. So we literally did not have a point guard in our program. And so we went out and we recruited a couple freshmen. At that time, there wasn't immediate eligibility. There wasn't a transfer portal like there is now. So we had a couple incoming freshmen that we liked, but obviously it's tough with freshmen to come in and be a great player right away, especially when you get a job and it's already springtime. And so we just were going to have to go with what we had. But I'll never forget. I got a call. I'm landing in O'Hare Airport, going to get a rental car a couple weeks after school got done. So it's like mid-May, and it's Joey's dad. And Mr. Rodriguez says, hey, what do you think about Joey coming back? And I said, well, I mean, I love Joey, and Joey's a great player and a good kid. I had gotten to know him actually a little bit when I was an assistant at Florida before coming to VCU. I said, but he just has to be all in. I mean, if he's coming back, he's got to be, all the way in, 2 feet in, and we need him to be a leader. And he said, well, we're kind of talking today, and, I think he's thinking about doing that. I said, okay, well, let me know. And, Joey ends up calling later in the day, and he says, I'm coming back. And so then the next day, Doc, I get a call from the coach at Rollins College, and he is pissed. I mean, you stole my player. And this guy's a very accomplished older coach. He's had a lot of success down there. You taking my player. He's getting ready to start summer school. And, you don't go and recruit someone off someone else's campus. And I said, whoa, wait a minute. I said, he was at VCU. So it's not like we just came down to Rollins College. And furthermore, they called me and said that they wanted to come back. So it's not that we stole your player. So anyway, down the road, I don't remember when this was. I think it might have even been after the Final Four. Joey says, "Hey, coach, do you remember when my dad called you that day?" And I said, "Yeah, of course I remember. That was obviously a huge deal." He said, we had been drinking in the backyard. We had been drinking beers. And he said, if we hadn't had a few beers, we probably never would have even made that call. So, usually you don't want players drinking, but in this case, it ended up working out in our favor.
That's a great story. That's a great story. Well, let me ask you a question. We talk a lot about VCU, but talk a little bit about that transition. Here you are, great success at VCU, get an opportunity to go to one of the preeminent schools, programs, athletic departments in the country at Texas. How big an adjustment was that for you? And was it about what you expected, or was it kind of culture shock? How did that all kind of work?
It was awesome, Doc. I mean, it was a heck of a learning experience. If I had to say, was it what I expected? I would say, looking back on it, I was very naive in terms of even thinking about what to expect, because, my only experience as a head coach was at VCU. I guess I kind of thought, because I'd been an assistant at Florida, I kind of compared Texas and Florida because of the football thing, being similar, big brands and football powerhouses. But it was an awesome experience. I mean, for me, I learned so much because you get placed in a much different setting, different environment, and you have to learn to adapt. And then you have to learn more about who you really are and what the core components are of you that you are not going to change, that are non-negotiable.
Right.
I'll never forget my second year at Texas. There was a coach there that had had a lot of success in another sport. And, I won't say their name, but this coach came into my office and they said, "Hey, I see what you're doing and I really respect you and I like you a lot, but I just want you to know, like, this whole relationship thing, like, that's not how it works here. You've got to become more transactional." And then they walked out of the office and I sat there and I thought to myself, well, that's not really who I am. So, sometimes you get in a position where you got to really, you got to reflect and you got to think, what am I about and what am I doing this for? What is my why? So for me, I tell you, I had a heck of an experience there learning from all the guys that I coached. I got to coach, Doc, some just high level people and high level players. And what was fun and so much different than VCU was having to take a group of guys that, maybe you had some guys that were thinking, I'm one and done. Maybe you had some other guys that were thinking, hey, I'm in my second or third year, but this is my last year in college. I want to get out of here after this. And trying to get those guys to come together and focus on one common cause and one common goal. And I just learned a lot about it. And it was awesome. My family got a lot out of it. And I just kind of got to the point where after the 2020-2021 season, we had our best team that we'd had. We won the Big 12 championship, which is the first time Texas has ever done that. We had a 3 seed in the tournament. We got upset in the NCAA tournament, just a heartbreaking game. It was one of those games where, kind of Murphy's Law, I guess, if something could go wrong, it went wrong. But I felt like, what? I really feel like this group of guys demonstrated what can be done in terms of the way we were able to play throughout the season. Obviously not our last game. But when this opportunity came up at Marquette, it just felt like a little bit more of a fit for me. And maybe I was a little bit more of a fit for here at Marquette. And so that's what prompted me to make the move, and really excited that I did. I mean, it's great to be at a place, it's just such a basketball tradition here. And there's also such a reliance on the basketball program being a focal point for, students to come to games and people to come together around. And that's pretty cool. Like that's how it was at VCU. And I don't think I took that for granted at VCU, but you probably never appreciate something enough until you don't have it anymore.
It kind of seems to me, and I don't know, but it seems like Marquette may be kind of the best of both worlds with Texas and VCU. With Texas, you had resources, you had history, tradition, maybe not so much in basketball, but that real loyalty to the university. I know Marquette, you go back down McGuire, those days, that it's such an integral part of that university. So that's kind of cool, but you also are at a basketball centric, place that really cares about it. So it kind of seems like Marquette kind of really is a great fit for you.
Well, I'll tell you what else, Doc, the Big East.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big part of that as well. I've always kind of felt over the past, well, really ever since I got to Texas, that the Big 12 and the Big East were the two best basketball leagues. And that's just my opinion. No disrespect to obviously the Big 10, the ACC, the Pac-12, SEC. These are great leagues. But from the standpoint of a couple things, one, you play everybody twice. So it's a true round robin, and you're not ducking anyone. You're going to have to play the great teams twice, and you're going to play the last place team in the league twice, at home and on the road. And then the other thing, just the unbelievable, like you said, resources and support and commitment that's made into basketball in the Big East. It's, again, these are basketball schools. So that's one thing that makes it really, really special. But you're right. One thing that was cool at VCU is, everyone, I don't remember exactly what it was, but if we had homecoming, it was for a basketball game. And here at Marquette, there's actually a holiday. You can look it up called National Marquette Day. That's in February over a weekend. And this kind of the central event is one of our home games. So it's just awesome. As a guy that played Division III basketball at Kenyon College, we probably averaged a few hundred fans at our games. To get a chance to be a part of this level of basketball. And I felt this way often at Texas. I also felt this way this past year at Marquette. Sometimes the games are going on and you're out there coaching and you just kind of have a moment where you're like, man, this is awesome. Like, this crowd is awesome. This competitiveness on the floor between these two teams is awesome. The fact that we're playing for something really, really important is awesome. And I get to be a part of it and get a chance to coach. So I'm really grateful for that.
Well, clearly, you've had a great career. You've earned it. You're probably one of the most intentional guys that I know. You really think through things. There are some commonalities that I think in coaching. Anthony was kind of the same way. You think through things. And, if you had to say, for right now, my passion is, I think this is, my grandson Finnegan's challenge, what we're trying to do to help families navigate, the challenges of having a child with a birth defect or other serious issue. What's your passion right now? You said you've been in this for a while. What is your passion?
I would say mentoring, for our guys. So mentoring our players, but then also mentoring for young coaches. Mm-hmm. I really enjoy that. I was really lucky, Doc. The first two coaches that I worked for between ages 22, right out of college, and 26. So my first 4 years, they were both African-American, and they both really put their arms around me and, quite frankly, treated me like their son. And in some ways still do. They really went above and beyond in terms of deciding to be more than a boss, but being a mentor. And so, that's something that I really enjoy, for younger coaches, particularly younger African-American coaches. It means a lot to me just to be able to maybe help guys understand certain things that I wish I would have understood earlier in my career. So that's a real passion. But, nothing's bigger than, the 12 to 15 guys you get to coach. And I love the fact that, all day and all night, I can kind of think about them and okay, what is it that we can do to help them take that next step as a person and as a player? And I love the challenge of these guys are 18, 19, 20 years old. Let's you and I, Doc, for a second, think back to when we were that age.
Oh boy.
I love the challenge of, okay, I was completely oblivious to A, B, and C when I was that age. Is there some way I can help maybe 1, 2, 3 of our players be a little bit better with their understanding with that than I was? Knowing that at that age, you know, you're still kind of on your way out. I kind of think in life, you have this this journey where for half of your life, you're a part of your life, you're kind of journeying outward, and you're moving and you're moving and you're striving and you're working towards something. And then you kind of hit a point in your life where now you're kind of coming back inward and you're more reflective. You're trying to help others. It's less about, you know, maybe trying to prove yourself or whatever it may be. So our guys are smack dab in the middle of moving outward. I mean, they are right there, and they got a long way to go with that. In some way, maybe I am too, but if we can help them continue to just grab hold of some of the things that might help them in that journey and help them reach others around them and impact others, that's what this thing's all about.
I mean, truer words are never spoken and never more important than today, you know, with the things that are out there. You guys got a lot of challenges, you know, from once you start even at VCU in 2009 to where you are today in 2022, you know, with social media, with transfer portal, with NIL. I mean, how much do you think all that, has that really affected how you deal with these guys?
Well, yes and no, Doc. I think the foundational components are still the exact same: relationships, communication, demonstrating genuine care and concern for the person beyond just the player. You know, communicating with parents is a huge thing. And then, you know, above all, really investing in their growth. Because let's be honest, I mean, players, they want to get better. They want to improve. They want to feel like, okay, my sophomore year, I was better than I was as a freshman. My junior year, I made strides compared to my sophomore year. And if they feel like they're growing, they feel like they're cared about, obviously winning really helps, then that, you know, they're less likely to look to go somewhere else. But to your point, you definitely have to make some adjustments and be vigilant and be aware of certain things that you didn't have to focus as much on before. I wish the media would shine a brighter light on the success stories of guys that have overcome adversity and been able to, you know, get through hard things where they are and get better, and then really kind of put their stake in the ground and say, hey, this is my home. I'm a part of this place. This place is a part of me, and I'm here to make it better, and people here make me better. I think there's a lot of great stories of that. You know, when I was at VCU, Doc, we had a guy you mentioned named Troy Daniels, and he was the last man on the Final Four team. I mean, we literally had a walk-on, David Hinton, that played more minutes than him during the NCAA tournament. So he was the last guy. Every other scholarship guy was getting minutes. And that was his sophomore year. Today's day and age, I mean, a lot of guys leave after that. But you know what we did? And I tell our staff this story all the time. One of us coaches put him through an individual workout after every single practice, his freshman year and his sophomore year, every day. So he felt like we were invested in his growth and his, you know, his development as a player. And so when that season got done, I sat down with him. I said, Troy, I know you didn't play as much as you wanted to play, and I appreciate the way you've worked. This is the vision we see for you moving forward. We have 5 guys graduating and moving on. We really feel like you're going to be able to take a jump. But it wasn't so much that conversation, Doc. It was everything we had done before that that got him to say, you know what? I believe in this place. I believe in you. And I know you believe in me. And then his junior year, he set a school record for 3-point makes. And then his senior year, he broke that record by 30 more 3-point makes. And then a couple years out from college, he's playing in the NBA on a guaranteed contract. No one else on that Final Four team sniffed the NBA. But because of his stick-to-itiveness and his willingness to say, I believe in this place and these people, and they believe in me, it changed his life.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's because, you and your staff invested in him, and he realized that. And just to tell you, when after I retired, I came up here to ETSU, and the president asked to come up help him for a couple months. That turned into a long time. But the first game that we played was against your VCU team playing here in the Dome. Troy made 11 threes. You guys.
Hey, Doc, I wasn't going to bring that up, but since you brought it up. So I forget who the coach was at that time.
Murray Bartow.
Yeah, Coach Bartow was there. And Coach Bartow had some terrific teams there. But I think because of injuries or whatever it was, they chose to play zone that whole game.
Right.
And we used to, do some stuff where we kind of moved Troy around on the baseline, and he would go from corner to corner, and we ran a couple misdirections. It was nothing crazy. But Troy got up 23s in that game. I mean, he shot 23. So he made 11, which is really impressive. But even to get up 23s. But actually, Doc, that was the third of a 3-game stretch where he made 7, 9, and 11 threes.
How about that?
So I've never coached a guy since then that can shoot that way. And I wish we still had him.
Well, hey, Coach, I know you're busy. You got guys on campus. I got one final question for you. So 24 hours before the game, what's your schedule look like? Do you have a routine you go through? Do you spend time with your family? What do you do for those 24 hours before a home game?
I do have a routine. I really, by the time you get done with your scouting meeting with the team the night before the game, most of that preparation stuff has been done. So any film watching at that point is more just to make yourself feel better, because as you know, as a coach, it really doesn't matter how much you know about the other team. It's about what you're able to convey to the players and what they're able to carry out on the floor. But I typically do, that night, I like to watch some more video, particularly if we've played that team previously. I'll watch that game ad nauseum, just the offensive clips or just the defensive clips, really try to dive into, some of the special situations like baseline out of bounds, like the pressing. But then, what's more important than that, the night before and the morning of the game, is I try to be intentional with, okay, what's the messaging that specific players need? We always have a game theme for the whole team. So let's say the team beat us the last time. So let's say the theme's payback. That's for the whole team. We really get them bought into that theme. But I try to think through the night before and the morning of the game. Okay, for Troy Daniels, what does he need to hear from me? What messaging does he need at shoot around today and pregame and even during the game? And I try to be thoughtful and intentional about that, because as you know, when you get into those pressure situations, sometimes as coaches, we can be reactionary to what's happening. But I've kind of found if you think that through and even write it down or plan it out, that can be helpful. And sometimes I'll even write the guy a note, because I found that, like, if you write it down, obviously that's a way to convey it to the player, but then it also kind of cements it in your brain. So I spent some time on that. I used to cut my hair every game day. Obviously the last couple of years, since COVID hit, I've kind of made an adjustment there. At the recommendation of my wife and daughter, they're really the bosses of our family. I try to work out on every game day. I'm really grateful that Giannis lets me use his weight room in the Fiserv Forum where we play. I'm saying that tongue in cheek.
Sure.
The Bucks have a really nice weight room that's really just for them, but you know, they let me go in there and work out. So after shoot around, that's helpful for me, just kind of getting the juices flowing. And yeah, just try to stay loose. That's one thing I learned from Billy Donovan. He was awesome at being loose going into the games. I mean, he'd be cracking jokes. I'm talking about with the coaches, not so much with the players, but around the coach. I mean, he was really in a good place. And that was different than any other coach I had been around. Because as you know,
Right.
coaches have a way of getting really, really tight on game day.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's great. Excuse me. That's great. Well, you know, I know you're busy. You got guys on campus. I know you're trying to find another, you said what, a 6'9" guy can rebound a little bit for you? If I find one, I'll send him your way.
Yeah, please do. Please do. Well, I mean, the way that college basketball is now, I think every staff is always recruiting.
Yeah.
But yeah, our guys are here, and we actually got workouts a little bit later today. It's a lot of fun, you know, just being around them this time of year, because it has to really be something wrong with you to not have a high level of positivity in June about getting better, about interacting with your teammates, and being around your team. So I really appreciate you having me, Doc. I've always had a ton of respect for you. And, you know, again, just I appreciate you giving me the initial opportunity at Villa 7, because that was a real positive domino for me.
Well, I think you did an awful lot of good things on your own, Coach. And I'm so happy. I follow you so close and just root for you every time you guys, you know, you tip it off. And, you know, I know that, you know, Marquette's in great hands. And so maybe sometime later I can get you back on another podcast. Is that okay?
Anytime, Doc. Thank you.
Thanks, Coach. Let's stay in touch. Thank you very much.
You got it.